But once it goes a step above where it is kicking Steven Adams, or it is kicking LeBron James, or stepping on Domantas Sabonis' torso, or in this case, putting another grown man in a full Nelson during a basketball game, that is where we have gone too far. Welcome back to the Kenny Beecham podcast. We got so much to talk about today. Starting off with Fight Night NBA. We got the in-season tournament halfway done. We got to figure out whether or not it's working. And lastly, Zach LaVine might be the next all-star caliber player to be traded. And we might talk about even more. You never really know. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I want to say, first of all, I appreciate the amount of support we got on last episode. You know, I think we really showed up and showed out on the Grant Williams interview. And I'm using that as a frame of reference when I talk to these other people that represent players and say, hey, you see the amount of love we got? We had Grant Williams. If you bring your athlete on the Kenny Beecham podcast, he'll get equal to more. So I want to say thank y'all so much for the love on that. Go over to Spotify, go over to Apple, pre-download those episodes, leave us 5 stars. I actually found out yesterday that just pre-downloading episodes don't really do anything, but I'm going to keep telling you to do it. You have to listen to at least 30 seconds of an hour-long podcast for it to count. I'm not telling you to go that far if that ain't your cup of tea, but I'm just saying all support is good support. You feel me? I think we have to start off the conversation that's been going around the league over the last 48 hours or so, and it has to deal with none other than Draymond Green. For the most part, in my time as covering the sport, for y'all audio listeners, I'll put the quotation marks, I don't even know if I would really call it that. As being a super fan of the sport, of the league, I have been a very lenient guy, a guy that's been in support of pretty much every NBA player as long as they're a positive person to society. And I would say that has carried over to Draymond Green through all of the antics, through all of the things Draymond Green has pulled off over the last decade. For the most part, I've been just letting him do his thing, not commenting about it, at least until today. Because I think he crossed the line, not just because Rudy Gobert is my boy, but because this year alone, in the last, let's say 14 months, Draymond Green has been unhinged. I am a guy that is in favor of a good old-fashioned rivalry, a good old-fashioned beef between two players. Because hell, in 2023, 2024, we very rarely get what I would deem to be a real rivalry. Whether it be because of player movement or this and that, there's just not real ones in the league, at least not a lot of them. So any chance I get to see a rivalry or beef, especially between two players, I'm here for it. Draymond Green is one of the best defensive players of this generation. Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players of this generation. So naturally, they're going to have beef because the way they defend is just different. Rudy Gobert ended up getting 3 DPOYs. Draymond Green didn't like that because he got 1. Draymond got his 1. I would argue that the second year after Draymond got his 1, he might have deserved this second one. But Rudy Gobert got his first one, and he's been on top of the world defensively for the most part, at least in the eyes of the voters. You know, Draymond Green has taken every single chance to take a shot at Rudy Gobert when he got the opportunity to. First example I could think of is when Rudy Gobert was snubbed from an All-Star appearance. Yes, I said snubbed from an All-Star appearance. Draymond Green is very vocal about the way Rudy Gobert handled himself. He cried. Yeah, let's be real. He cried, and not only Draymond Green, but a lot of players really was like, oh, that's not right. Even Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most dominant players of all time, was like, Rudy Gobert, that ain't the way you showcase your frustration on national TV. Either way, Draymond Green has taken shots at Rudy, and Rudy has tried his best to keep up. Draymond Green does have a better way with the microphone, so Rudy Gobert does not have him in that department. He does not have him in that department. He does have his good remarks, whether it be about Snapchat or at least after this recent scuffle, he's made some good things, but he's just not going to hold his own with the mic. You know what I'm saying? It's like the good old-fashioned, what was it, John Cena versus Roman Reigns. The WWE fans know about that. I'm not even a WWE fan, but I just remember the clip of John Cena helping Roman Reigns through his lines in a read or whatever. That's how it feels, you know? So Rudy's not going to be able to compare there. But the other day, they were playing in their in-season tournament game, and maybe this is just a proven fact that the in-season tournament is heightening the frustrations or heightening the intensity of basketball. Before this game even had a score, we saw a scuffle between Jaden McDaniels and Klay Thompson. These boys go at it for a little bit. Most people that watch this incident will see what Rudy Gobert did as trying to break them apart. Draymond Green didn't see it as that. Draymond Green saw red and immediately went after Rudy Gobert, put him in a headlock, a full Nelson, a master, like whatever you want to call it. He had Rudy Gobert's head for about 9 straight seconds. And I will be real, hilarious. As an innocent bystander here, hilarious. You feel me? We found out today that Draymond Green is going to be suspended for the next 5 games because of this act. But I am just tired of all of the Draymond Green stuff. For the most part, throughout the course of his career, it's been like, hey, Draymond is such a great player and such an intricate part to what the Warriors have been able to do that we're willing to go through all of this stuff with him. We're willing to see him do what he does because at the end of the day, he's helped us win. How many championships? A lot. But I think there's a level to it that he has pushed. When he's yapping to the opposing team, harmless. I even see the benefit of those things. But once it goes a step above where it is kicking Steven Adams, or it is kicking LeBron James, or stepping on Domantas Sabonis' torso, or in this case, putting another grown man in a full Nelson during a basketball game, that is where we have gone too far. Steve Kerr, the coach, of course, of the Golden State Warriors, had this to say. Guys on the bench were telling me that Rudy's hands were on Klay's neck, and that's all I know. Okay. Do we believe that? Because this is after the game, so I'm sure he's been briefed, but I digress. This is Steve Kerr again, last season when Draymond Green stomped on Domantas Sabonis. I didn't see the play live, and then I didn't see the replay. Another scenario where he was asked about it in a post-game interview where I am 100% sure he had the opportunity to see the stomp. And then after Draymond Green notoriously punched his own teammate, then told the world that the vibes were just off for whatever reason, Steve Kerr came to the podium and he seemed to be more upset about the video leaking versus the actual act of Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole. Now, if we look at all of these instances, in my opinion, it looks as though Steve Kerr has turned into an enabler of Draymond Green's actions. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't hold him accountable completely, but when you come to the media after a situation like this, or the last situation, and say, hey, I didn't see it. Hey, man, we need to be better about what stays in the locker room. That just reads wrong to me. And at this point, when you look at those instances from the Draymond Green stomp, the Draymond Green kick, the Draymond Green full Nelson, these things have not positively impacted the team at all. If anything, it's been a detriment. In 2016, his suspension was one of the main reasons why LeBron and Kyrie Irving were able to do something that nobody's ever been able to do in NBA history. If Draymond plays the game, I don't know how history will go, but I do like the odds. And now in this case, luckily this is happening beginning of the season. These 5 games that he's gonna miss won't matter, or maybe it will because parity is at an all-time high. I don't know. Only we will know in April. These 5 games may not mean anything. But when he stomped on Domantas Sabonis' chest, he you know who got out lucky? He did. You know who has been so lucky to have a guy like Steph Curry on his roster? Him. Because if it wasn't from Steph Curry in that playoff series turning into a supernova version of himself, then we'll be looking back on that stomp and be like, that is one of the reasons why this team lost in the first round. He's just gone way too far. And my problem is not just with Draymond. It's with a lot of people involved, actually. It's with the fans. And listen, I'm not putting this big old bucket over all Warriors fans because I've seen a ton of Warriors fans realize that what Draymond Green has done for the last 14 months has been inexcusable. But there's a pocket of them, and they're loud, and they're wrong, and that bothers me. I always want people to really internalize what they're doing. Let's say you don't know me. You might be a fan of the show, of the content, but you don't know me. I beg you to never blindly support me if I am in the wrong. I beg of you, because that's just not what I would want. And Draymond Green might want that because, look, you see this many people said I'm right, but it's just not the way to do it. And there is a genre, a subcategory of Warriors fans that has blindly defended this man through all of this. There is a 1 second frame where it does have Rudy Gobert having his hand around Klay, but look at Klay's eyes. He's not in a struggle. There are fans that will use that one frame and say that no, Draymond Green was helping Klay because Klay was in the stranglehold too. He wasn't. Klay Thompson did not walk out of that in any harm whatsoever. This is a case of Draymond Green seeing an opportunity to take a shot at some guy he desperately doesn't like, and he took advantage of it. He was in the wrong. The Warriors commentators are no better. No better. And again, I'm not normally a guy that's vocal in these type of scenarios, but I watch this from their POV. I'm listening to them talk about it, and I'm watching the same replay that they watch it. And the bias is crazy. Now, every single local broadcast is going to be biased towards their team because in a lot of cases, the color announcer, the color commentator is a guy that used to play for the team. It's Kalena Azubuike in Chicago. It is our guy, Stacey King. Like, they're going to be biased. But when you see your player put someone else in a full Nelson, or you see your player stomp on someone else's chest, come on, man. Come on, man. You got to call a spade a spade. I am a fan of many players in the association. One of them is on this roster. Hell, I call myself a secondary Warriors fan going into the season because I want to see my boy Chris Paul win a championship, right? Chris Paul did something against Mike Conley a couple games before this, what I see as completely dirty and wrong. He is my favorite player of all time. We as fans should be able to differentiate the things. That is a dirty and wrong play. But that little subgenre of Warriors fans like, nah, Draymond Green can do no wrong. I, a guy that follows over 1,000 people on Twitter, had to unfollow people because it was becoming way too much. I saw somebody pull up the video of Serge Ibaka punching Marquise Chris. He got 3 games. That is kind of funny, though. He did only get 3 games. But the reputation 100% matters, and it should. In every case, in our judicial system, if you offend a second time, you're not going to just get a slap on the wrist for the second time. No, you're going to get a longer sentence. That's the way it always has been. The NBA's refereeing committee is not giving him a slap on the wrist because they're condemning his actions. They're saying, hell, if you keep doing this, we're going to continue to increase the amount of games you're going to get. If he got 2 games or 3 games, Draymond Green won't care. He might not even care about the 5 games. So it's their job to set an example and say, this is something you cannot do. I would argue 5 games pretty lenient. Actually, I would argue the NBA is pretty lenient about all of the suspensions they have handing out, whether it be for domestic disputes or whatever. There are a lot of players that I have liked throughout the course of my fandom. I will never blindly defend anybody, whether it be on dirty plays on the court or allegations off the court. You have to be able to differentiate your fandom to what's right and what's wrong, and everybody hasn't been able to do that. There's also a stat that came out about all of this. It says 7 of Draymond's last 11 ejections have come without Steph Curry playing. Just a fun stat. Even Rudy Gobert talked about this, and this was before people went to do the research or whether or not. He said that anytime Steph Curry doesn't play, Draymond finds a way to not play, which is just interesting. And I don't, honestly, in defense of Draymond, after all of this, I don't think that's like Steph Curry's not playing, I don't feel like playing either. I think he's trying to play with an extra edge because without Steph playing, they're just going to lose. So I need to play with a little bit of extra chip. I need to have people fear me, you know? And I think you can do those things without stepping over the boundary. And in this case, Draymond Green stepped over the boundary. Let me know what you think in the comment section, or hit me up on Twitter or Spotify, whatever, because there is a place you can comment on Spotify. That was something I didn't know. I didn't know that. So let me know what you think about the Draymond Green thing. 5 games, enough, not enough. Will we see Draymond kind of relax? I don't know. I doubt it. But how long before we see the next one? That's probably a better question. How long before we see the next thing of Draymond Green? I cannot believe this man punched his teammate last year, and then at the nerve at the start of this year say, yeah, Vavs was not right back there. Do y'all realize how crazy that really is? And again, I don't know if I mentioned this on this episode. I admire the basketball IQ of Draymond. Hell, I even interviewed him in 2020 on a show I used to host called The Real, which I don't host that show anymore. I'm still going on. I'm just not the host. And I only got 20 minutes with him. And I admired every single one of those minutes because I think we were able to go deep into basketball. His basketball knowledge is crazy. He's like a basketball encyclopedia in his own way. So in those 20 minutes, I was like, man, I wish I had 30. I wish I had 40 because what he knows is ridiculous. The amount of plays he's able to read and react to, especially in his heyday as winning DPOY or being all defensive, which I guess that was last year. He's just always been somebody I enjoyed watching for the defensive aspect, because if you know me, Kenny love the defense. But once we get to the other stuff, we didn't go too far. Now I want to talk about the in-season tournament a little bit, because at this point, we're about halfway through, which is cool. I think one of my major gripes with the in-season tournament is that it started so very early. We were, 1 week into the season, and then we got our first games. We even got teams right now. The Toronto Raptors have not played an in-season tournament game as of right now, which is just crazy because some teams have two. They have yet to play one. It's just ridiculous. I just wanted to check in on the in-season tournament and kind of fill out the question for y'all. How are y'all enjoying it? Because I've mentioned to people before, this in-season tournament thing is not for me. I'm watching hoops every single night regardless. It is for the people that may not share that sentiment. The people that might look at a Tuesday or Thursday and say, I'm not really feeling basketball tonight. I'll do something else. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious about what the normal fan is really thinking about it and not the guy that works in media. You know what I'm saying? I also watched yesterday's game, but one thing in mind, if you look at the in-season tournament rules and formats and stuff, once we get down to a tiebreaker, there are a couple of things that matter, like a point differential, which means that if you have a blowout game, in most cases, if you care about the in-season tournament, you should probably keep your foot on the gas. Because you never know. You might tie with a team, but your point differential is better and you make the final 4, you make the final 8, whatever the hell the number is. So I was watching these games trying to figure out, okay, can I determine which teams value the in-season tournament versus not? One team I know 100% cares is the Indiana Pacers. And the reason I know that is because in his post-game interview, Tyrese Halliburton talked about the fact that he's never been able to compete for a championship, and it's the best thing he's got at the moment, so they care a ton. I think that's the right sentiment. A team I know also cares, Brooklyn Nets. Kenny, why do you say that? The Brooklyn Nets were playing a game against the Orlando Magic. Shout out to the Orlando Magic. Second night of a back-to-back game winner against the Bulls. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They were playing a game against the Orlando Magic. And in this game, the final score ended up being 124-104. And in normal regular season games that just matter for one win, you normally see teams take the foot off the gas. 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We up by 17. That's a normal enough time for me to say, hey, my starters can rest because we might have a game tomorrow, whatever. The Brooklyn Nets did not do that. They were up by 20 plus points. And in the fourth quarter, Spencer Dinwiddie played all 12. Royce O'Neal played all 12. And then they scored another bucket with 3 seconds to go. Brooklyn's going for that in-season tournament jewelry. And I'm here for that. Also, we had teams like OKC versus the Spurs, which was a game. Listen, it's a game, highly anticipated game. Chet versus Wemby for the first time in the regular season. The little glimpses of that we got in the preseason were nice. And the amount of promotion this game got, I knew for sure there was a 0% chance to live up to the hype. There was a 0% chance, and it didn't. It was a blowout. It wasn't great. Neither of the two players that were highly marketed had great games. I guess you could say they had good games because they're rookies and all, but I knew it wasn't going to live up to the hype, and it didn't. It got so bad, it was on TNT, and going into the fourth quarter, TNT abandoned the game completely. They start showing games from across the association, which is something we don't see, we do not see often. But when you see a team like the Spurs and how bad they looked that night, hell, if you want to keep your viewership up, you might want to look at some of the other in-season tournament games. But in this one, both teams pulled their starters. You know, OKC could have kept Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the game. Hell, it would have helped my parlay. He was a half a rebound away from me hitting the green. But they decided to pull him for the entire fourth quarter. Played the entire third. Wemby didn't play much in the fourth quarter. So I would say that Pop doesn't necessarily care about the in-season tournament because that point differential thing. But I can't completely say that OKC doesn't, because again, they did end up winning by like 20 plus points. I guess it doesn't matter. But these, again, are the things that I'm monitoring. Because that unspoken rule of we can't score if we're up with dribbling out the ball, that's been dead. We've seen it twice now where a team has scored in the last couple seconds of an in-season tournament game. And in previous history, when a team had done that, it caused some scuffles. I remember PJ Tucker getting into a scuffle with someone because they scored with a couple seconds left. And now it's like, hey, it's an in-season tournament. Those are the rules. You know, those are the rules. I can't really tell who cares and who does it as far as the individual players go. But $500,000 is $500,000. I was talking with Bomani Jones about this earlier. We were trying to figure out what is the payoff for the coaches, for the trainers, for the ball boy. You know, everybody got to get a piece, right? Everybody got to get a piece. As a guy that covers the sport, I can't say, in all honesty, that the in-season tournament has changed my viewing experience. I can't say that I'm a level higher as far as how much I care. You know, the one thing I will say is that the conversations around it has been higher. I was getting messages from people that I know don't really care about the game of basketball much. You know, sports fan, but a casual NBA fan in the sense that the way they keep up with the NBA is occasionally watching my episodes. My episodes. And I got some text messages saying like, oh, these courts are cool. These jerseys are cool. So if that is the way it's going, I'm a little bit afraid because that's going to lose its value in year 2 and year 3, where the courts are not really interested anymore. It might be interesting now because it's year number 1, but we get to year number 2, year number 3, that's the court we've seen already. Or even if they make minor adjustments, it's not like this thing that's going to bring people in. So I think they need to find a way to get them more invested other than saying, hey, this is another game of basketball that means more. They have to add an incentive for the fans. And again, speaking of Tyrese Halliburton, he's been one of the big proponents or the big advocates for the in-season tournament. He had the idea of whatever team wins the in-season tournament is guaranteed a playoff spot. And I like the idea. I'm not saying it's the right idea, but I think that's a good starting spot. What if they get the decision? This not even in my notes. I'm spitballing right now. I'm just talking it through about how we could get the NBA fans to care, right? Because if I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I'm a Boston Celtics fan, I want the Larry O.B. You feel me? I don't care about no in-season tournament. But actually, maybe they don't care about the playoff guarantee because they're going to make the playoffs regardless. So maybe the mid-tier teams, the Chicago Bulls, guaranteed a playoff spot, we in. Maybe they get to make a decision between a guaranteed playoff spot and a guaranteed lottery pick. You know, not a highly weighted one, not one that has a 13% chance of the first overall pick, but let's say 1.2% chance. We've seen teams jump up the lottery at 1.2. The Bulls held at 1.6. They got Derrick Rose. So you're trying to tell me I get an extra lottery pick, an extra chance at the first overall pick? If I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, there's no other way for me to get a lottery pick right now. So actually, damn, you playing 47 minutes tonight because we want to be able to grow our future while also competing now. I don't know, just spitball. I think that could be fun. I think that could be fun because even a team like the Washington Wizards be like, that means we get double the chances to get the first overall pick. I don't think they're winning any games regardless. But I don't know. You let me know in the comment section what you're thinking about the in-season tournament. Now it's time for my favorite segment, the Ask KB. What you got to do is go over to Twitter or hit in the comment section and use the hashtag ASKKB, and I'm answering multiple questions from y'all every single episode. This first one comes from Dylan Moore. Kenny, does Victor Wembanyama have a real chance of winning DPOY this year? Or is the other Frenchman too dominant? I'm not ready to give Rudy Gobert the DPOY just yet. He might be the front runner at the moment, but what are we, 10 games to the season, 70 plus games left? Who really knows if it's going to be, is it going to be Rudy? Is it going to be somebody else? I don't really know. DPOY is typically an award that is won in the first month and then lost if the guy just falls off. But last year with even Jaren Jackson Jr. or the year before that and Marcus Smart, it came down to the last couple months or so. So who really knows? I do not believe that Victor Wembanyama has a real case though. I know this is coming from the fact that the betting odds have him as the second highest favorite behind Rudy Gobert. I do not see it as a real possibility. And here's why. I went through the last 16 years of DPOYs and tried to figure out, do these people have anything in common? In my mind, I thought before doing this research that DPOYs were given to the best defender in most cases on a top 3 defensive team in the league. And for the most part, that's right. Jaren Jackson Jr. is second best defense in the league. Marcus Smart first best. Rudy Gobert first best. Giannis first best. Rudy Gobert first best. Rudy Gobert second best. Draymond Green first best. This is the cycle, at least in the modern era, where you typically are the best defensive player on one of the top 2 teams for the most part. We don't get a team outside of the top 2 defensively winning DPOY until we get to Tyson Chandler. And his team is 5th. And this is actually, I'm happy you asked this question. I did this research because I actually admired the way things were before that. Before everybody, every single voter was extremely analytical. Because if you look at D12's DPOYs, they were the 10th best defensive team one year, the 5th best defensive team another, the 8th best defensive team another. Just different than the modern era. The modern era said you have to be 1 or 2. They were like, nah, we going off vibes. We're going off the eye test. And guess what? I'm not complaining. That version of Dwight Howard was a monster defensively. He probably deserved that. I mean, I ain't looking at his competition, but I'm saying he probably deserved that. And because I was living these moments, and there was not a defender that was feared in the paint more than Dwight Howard. So for sure. But it wasn't. This is not numbers based. This is just vibes, and I'm here for the just vibes ratings. If we want to go just vibes rating, hell, give it to Wembanyama. It's not the way it works anymore. One thing I also looked at, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett is a guy that in his prime, I was extremely young as a basketball fan. So for the most part, I missed it, right? I was there for 2008. I was there in 2008. How old does that make me? Sheesh. I'm still pretty young. You know what I'm saying? I'm 12 years old, but I was there. I experienced, I watched every single one of those games in the series live. But when we talk about him being in Minnesota, all I really have is Hardwood Classics and highlights. The numbers, though. The numbers are insane for not just his time in Minnesota, but the entirety of Kevin Garnett's career. When he was on the court defensively, his team was one of the best 3 defensive teams in basketball, which is mind-blowing because that went all the way into his last 3 years of his career when he was well past. He had already jumped the shark. You know what I'm saying? He was well past his athletic prime, and he was still doing his thing. I got to go back, man. I got to go back and try to watch as much KG as I really can because that's a part of history that I respect and I understand. But because I wasn't there, I can't really, grasp the impact, So I got to go back in my bag and go watch more KG random regular season highlights and not really focus on playoffs and stuff. But his DPOY year, they were first in everything. First in everything. And then we get to 2006, 2007. And this is the prime example of going off vibes. Because Marcus Camby won DPOY. Marcus Camby led the league in blocks that year. But they were the 8th ranked defense, which again is pretty similar to what I mentioned with Dwight Howard and stuff. His team was 2 points worse defensively when he was on the court. How do you win DPOY when your team is worse defensively with you on the court? Strictly vibes, So I was like, okay, so that's one criteria for the most part. You have to be a part of one of the best defensive teams in basketball. Wemby does not have that. They're one of the worst. They're 28th. But when Wemby is on the court, he is in the 98th percentile as much as his on-off numbers defensively. 98th percentile, which is ridiculous. That tells me that, yes, he is right now, by the numbers, one of the best defensive players in ball as a rook. But that hasn't mattered historically. Because historically, they want the overarching team defense too. That right there, that 98th percentile is on the same level as Rudy Gobert's last DPOY or Giannis's DPOY. This team is minus 15 points better defensively, which is crazy. That's better than every single DPOY in the last 16 years. Now, again, the sample size is 10 games, right? Is that sustainable? Probably not. But I'm just saying, the individual numbers say he should be in conversations, but based on the history of the voters, he will not be. I just don't think they'll give a DPOY to a player that is on the team that is 28th defensively. The next one comes from Intergalactic You and Me. Is that Kid Cudi? I think it is. What is your favorite stage of watching a team? Selling, buying, rebuilding, contending, or no man's land? I love this question. Because as a guy that tries to keep up with all things basketball, it is integral. It is important that I divvy up the amount of time I watch of every single team, right? I will tell you right here, right now, the worst team to watch, the worst kind of team to be watching is the no man's land team. I'm living that as a Bulls fan. I'm living no man's land. And I hate every single second. But it's part of who I am, to support my team. It's an end time. So whether they're losing to a Paolo Banchero game winner when they're on the second night of back-to-back and neither team can put up 100, or they're winning a game, I will be here. But I hate watching every single second of it. It's awful. And as of right now, it's not a lot of teams in no man's land. So luckily, most fan bases ain't dealing with that at the moment. The next one, going up the ladder. Last is no man's land. Second to last is selling. Because you're really just showcasing the pieces to the other organizations. Oh, who want him? Who want him? A lot of the times the selling teams have had the writing on the wall that they're not good enough for some time. So us fans on the outside is like, man, it's just a matter of time before they make this trade. So I ain't even worried about them. I'm going to start watching them once they make the trades because I want to see the intriguing young pieces they got. And that gets me to my next one, the rebuilding team. I'm here for rebuilding teams, specifically in the first 2 months of the season. Like, there are teams right now that I would deem to be rebuilding. I'm watching a lot of Detroit Pistons. I don't know if I will be watching much Detroit Pistons come December. I don't know. I love Ausar Thompson. I might watch Ausar Thompson's minutes and not necessarily the whole team. You feel me? But I'm here for the first 2 months because I want to see how this young player progressed to year number 2, how this young player progressed to year number 3, or some cases regressed, because it happens, sophomore slumps, they happen. So that leaves us with our top 2 teams to watch. I love the buying team in the second spot because we looking at them like, yeah, they one piece away. They one piece away, y'all. They one piece away. You try to figure out what that piece is on the market. Does it make sense to trade for this guy? Make sense to trade for this guy? Because a lot of times the buying teams are also teams that are playoff teams. So a lot of times they're relatively good. And good basketball is fun basketball. And of course, at the top is contending teams. Nothing gets better than watching a team that's good at basketball, simply put. You know what I'm saying? The Denver Nuggets are one of the best watches of basketball. Even without Jamal Murray, still a great watch. The Boston Celtics, great watch. Because they're contending and they have a ton of watchable players. So shout out to Intergalactic, you and me. The last question I have is from Ken. And look at you. How many years would you say a chip is equivalent to? If the Warriors went all in and won this year, but ruined the foreseeable future, how many years of rebuilding / retooling is that championship worth? I love this question, Kenny. I love this question, Kenny, because it makes it seem like I'm talking to myself. No. I love this question. Because the answer varies, right? When you have a guy like Steph Curry, a guy that I have said over the last couple of years that you need to buy into the Steph timeline like no other. I don't care about what happens after Steph Curry because getting him another championship, getting your city, your team another championship is worth so much. His last championship a few years ago had the conversations. Who's better, him or Magic? Is he top 10? You add another to that. And I don't know if Steph Curry care about legacies or whatever. If you add 2 championships post Kevin Durant, I think that's worth everything. How many years would it? How many years? How many years is it worth to get Steph Curry one more championship? So we're talking about pick equity, young players, Kuminga, Moody, all of these guys out the door because we gonna build a trade to bring in somebody that's gonna guarantee us a championship. Listen, half a decade? Because look, at this point, this team has been a dynasty. So for the better half of a decade, close to 10 years, this team has been in contention. They fans would be all right if they have 5 years of downtime post Steph Curry. You feel me? Because they can really reminisce those moments. One thing that I feel like a lot of fans would be envious of if their team has not won a championship in the modern era is they can't necessarily relive those moments. The entirety of the Steph Curry era, you can relive every second of it because it's everywhere in the internet. You know what I'm saying? So if you won a championship in 2004, you could get the highlights. You could get the prime moment. You could probably right now watch every single game of the Steph Curry championship run. Complete it. Because of the internet. But you can't do that for 2004. You can't do that in 2005. So those fans can relive those moments. Oh, man. We 10-72. Let me go back and watch 2021 real quick. Right? That was the year, right? Was that 2022? Let me go back and rewatch 2022 real quick, because it's all there. I'm going to say in that case, as long as possible, but in some cases, actually, I'm going to disagree with my notes right here. I think in most cases, if you're a team that has never won a championship before, if you are the Charlotte Hornets, not to pick on y'all, but if you are the Charlotte Hornets, for one taste of a championship parade, you might be willing to give up 10 years of whatever. Because hell, you just had 30 years of nothing. So what's 10 more if that means we get one piece of jewelry? I don't really know how realistic that is, right? To convince your fans of that. But I'm just saying, I would trade a lot of things in for a Bulls championship right now, right? This is a crazy question because on other show that I do, my boy Pierre was asking me, would I trade in watching Steph Curry? I'm not Steph Curry. Derrick Rose win his MVP for an NBA championship. And I said, selfishly, 100 times out of 100. 100 times out of 100 would I sacrifice a Derrick Rose MVP for a ring. And we're just living in this hypothetical world. The rumors of LeBron and Wade and Bosh potentially coming to Chicago, or a combination of the 2 or the 3 guys coming to Chicago and what that could have meant for the city. And in that case, because LeBron is on the team, we probably don't see Derrick Rose go win a championship or MVP because they're going to be playing together. Derrick Rose's biggest competition in the MVP race was LeBron James. You feel me? So you probably never see him go to the top of the league. I would not care. Because at the end of the day, I'm in this for the team success. You feel me? I always say that I don't grow attached to players on my favorite team because I can watch them and be fans of them no matter where they go. No matter where they go. Larry Marketing got traded to Cleveland. I'm like, that's my guy. I wanted him off the team. I'll be honest with you, Larry. You might come into the show one day. We've been talking. You might come into the show, and I'll be honest with you. When you were traded, I was like, good. You know, not because you were bad, but because that era of Bulls was over in my mind. But I'm like, I'll watch you in Cleveland. I'll root for you in Cleveland. And now he's in Utah. I'm rooting for him too. Like, I can root for my favorite players on different teams. So I never grow attachment to the players. I'm here for the org. Not Jerry Reinsdorf, because we don't mess with that guy. But the org that I grew up watching Jamal Crawford go against Allen Iverson and the Bulls beating the 76ers when they're trying to go on the championship run. The team that I fell in love with, that you can see pictures of Lil Kenny and his Chicago Bulls warm-up. You feel me? Again, we don't mess with Jerry Reinsdorf, but we mess with Benny the Bull. We mess with the people that work for the Bulls, but not the owner. We hate the owner. So I'm here for that versus the players. And that's actually a really good segue to our next conversation, which is Zach LaVine. There was a random report the other day from Shams Charania that, you know, the Bulls are listening and Zach LaVine is open and they're open to potentially moving him. And yeah, it's about time. It's about time. The Bulls' big three of DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Zach LaVine have a negative net rating when they all play. Everybody knows that. It's been beaten into the ground. Everybody understands that. It's the worst big three in recent history. We understand. But I'm not here to say like, oh, should we do it? Should we not do it? I'm here to take it a step further. I put together 5 different tiers of a Zach LaVine trade about the likelihood of the other 29 teams potentially traded for him. Yes, I'm treating Zach LaVine as if he's one of the greatest players in the league because that's what we got right now. You feel me? That's what we got right now. He hasn't been good this year. He just had a really solid last 2 minutes of a fourth quarter against the Orlando Magic, which was dope, but his shooting splits are the worst there ever been, really. He's in a slump. And I honestly do believe that a change of scenery is going to be good for him. And like I just mentioned with Larry Marketing, wherever he ends up getting traded to, I will be a fan of him on that team. Because for the last 7 years, he's been one of the main guys I've rooted for, you know? So I'm a fan of him regardless, no matter what the trade is. I'm a little bit afraid that we're going to get finessed. I'll say that aloud. So once the trade happens and we do get finessed, I'll tell you, you heard it here first. But I'm saying, okay, so there's 5 different tiers. This is how I broke it up. There's a group of teams that it's literally impossible that he gets traded there, whether it be because of financial reasons or a log jam at the guard position for a lot of different reasons. Tier number 5 are the teams that have no business even picking up the phone for Zach LaVine. Then we have tier number 4, which is the unlikely, which I guess something is possible, but maybe just, I just don't think it's worth talking about. Third tier are my sleepers. Second tier is possible. And my number 1 tier is the favorites to get Zach LaVine. Are we ready for this? Let's talk about all the impossibles. I'm just going to run through them and maybe stop here or there. Milwaukee Bucks, the Washington Wizards, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Phoenix Suns, the LA Clippers, the Minnesota Timberwolves, keep up with me now, the Dallas Mavericks, the Houston Rockets, the Cavaliers, the Denver Nuggets, the Grizzlies, the Celtics, and the Spurs. That is 13 teams. Nearly half of the association should not be picking up the phone for different reasons, right? For the Milwaukee Bucks, they literally don't have assets that are worth trading. They don't have the contracts that they could put together unless they're breaking up their core, which we see that they're not against because they just traded Drew Holiday a couple months ago. But again, super, super unlikely. Clippers, same situation. What do you have to trade? You just traded for James. It ain't working. You don't need another offensive dominant player on your team. Cool. Rockets, they have young assets. They have money to spend, but they are rolling right now. They have a player that is similar to Zach LaVine and Jalen Green already. So I'm assuming they're going to stay away. Cavaliers have guards. Okay, you understand all of this. The Nuggets are the reigning champions. They're not breaking nothing up. The unlikely cases, and some of these unlikely case teams, I actually enjoy the idea of him getting traded there because I like some of the stuff that they could potentially get traded for, but they're unlikely for different reasons. The first 2 is the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. The reason I find these to be unlikely because it's rare that you see a team trade I'm putting it in quotation marks, y'all, star. Let's say all-star caliber player to a division rival, right? Sending him to Indiana could be a nightmare because Indiana Pacers are really good. And it does make it a little bit iffy now that they bought out Daniel Tice because his contract would have had to be in this deal. Regardless, trading him away to that team when they're rolling and he could potentially come back to bite you, just bad practice. Same thing with the Detroit Pistons. They're 2-9, I think, at this point in time. They probably shouldn't be buying anyway, but trading him away to Detroit would probably be bad just in case Cade Cunningham, with this added spacing, turns into a guy that doesn't turn the ball over every possession. Also, Atlanta Hawks, the Trae Young, DeJounte pairing is okay. I think it's unlikely. But in my mind, I like the idea of a swap there between one of those guys. But again, super, super unlikely. The Hornets are not very good, so I don't think they're trading away draft capital because that would be what they do in this. It would be like Gordon Hayward and draft capital. I don't think they're looking to give up first-round picks on a team that's not very good. OKC has a lot to give, but not enough that Zach LaVine's not good enough to go get one of the main staples, so that's probably not going to happen. And then the Pelicans is unlikely, even though there's some turmoil potentially there. Unlikely teams. Sleepers. These are the teams I think that low-key going to be picking up the phone like, what's the price? Let's potentially talk things through. Let's do a little bit of business. The first one is the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic need spacing like no other. I just watched them again tonight. They cannot shoot. I mean, they're missing Wendell Carter and Markelle Fultz and stuff. They're down a couple starters and things, but the three-point shooting has been a problem. And though Zach LaVine is struggling from there this year, history tells us he's one of the best three-point shooters in basketball. And they could just if they can add a guy that could create his own shot outside of Paolo and Franz, I think it would go a long way. What does a trade look like? That's not what this is about. Just teams that should pick up the phone and talk to, okay? The next one I have is the Toronto Raptors. Now, this is contingent on them trying to buy into the Scotty Barnes thing. And them also not looking to rebuild but retool around Scotty because that team also needs spacing. You're going to see there's a combination of things. You know what I'm saying? If you need shooting, Zach LaVine can provide that. The Sacramento Kings. Kings are good. They're very good. But the Sacramento Kings are also the team that threw him the qualifying offer back when he was a free agent. What was that, 4 years ago? I don't know. I mean, it's a different regime and everything, but maybe they're still a little bit like, oh, we could add that type of guy on our team. The unfortunate part is he would just be too expensive to make the money match. It would be like Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter, giving up 2 starters for Zach LaVine on a team that's already good. I don't think that's something you can convince your fan base to do. But they should at least call the Utah Jazz. Danny Ainge got all them picks. The way Utah is going to build their team to be a contender is through the draft and making the right trade at the right time. They did that acquiring Larry Markkinen. They did that acquiring all of the draft capital for Rudy Gobert and for Donovan Mitchell. Maybe Danny Ainge wants to cash in a little bit. But the problem with that is Chris Dunn and Larry Markkinen play over there. So you just be taking the 2019 Chicago Bulls and putting them, let's go 2018 Chicago Bulls and putting them on the same team with Will Hardy and say he's better than Jim Boylan, which he is, objectively. And the last team is the Brooklyn Nets. Because I don't know what the Brooklyn Nets direction is. If they need scoring, Zach LaVine can provide that. They have so many good tradable pieces. And that's the reason why I think they're my favorite sleeper here, because I don't think the Bulls in their current regime is looking to rebuild. I think they're looking to retool, right? So with the Nets having so many players that are rotation players and a lot of them not getting the amount of minutes maybe they deserve, they package a few of those players together, maybe give one of those Suns picks, and maybe we got ourselves a deal. From the front office, from a fan perspective, I don't really love it. But from a front office perspective, when you're looking for depth, you're looking for players that kind of fit what you want to do, they have a lot of players like that. It steps on the toes of Cam Thomas a little bit. Maybe you can argue that you got Zach LaVine already. His name is Cam Thomas. I don't know. So let's get to the probables. The first one I have is New York Knicks. I have convinced myself that this is a trade worth doing. Now, Knicks fans have convinced themselves out of it. 6 months ago, if I would have told you, Knicks fans, we want to trade RJ Barrett for Zach LaVine, you're pulling the trigger 100% of the time. And if you're saying you're not, you're lying to me. But now, because Rowan is hooping, you're like, nah, we don't like that. Maybe you should sell high on RJ Barrett and let him come to Chicago. Now, I honestly do think that the New York Knicks are going to stand pat and wait for a superstar, not an all-star. Like, you know, they wait to see what happens with Donovan Mitchell. They wait to see what happens with this player, that player. They don't seem like a team that's desperate to cash in their chips just yet. And cashing in your chips for Zach LaVine doesn't do enough. You know what I'm saying? And I don't look at them and say, oh, that team's going to be Boston in the 7. That team's going to be Denver in the 7. So because of that, maybe unlikely. But big market for Zach LaVine. He wants to play in a big market. That's what I assume. The next team is the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we've seen conflicting reports about this. Some people say, yeah, they're in on it. Other teams, other sources said, nah, they like the team they have now. Kelly Oubre is going to be missing a little bit of time, so maybe that changes things, but we would have to wait a little bit of time to make that happen because the Nicholas Batums of the world, the Mook Morris of the world can't be traded until the end of the calendar year. But I've expressed on the show, I don't like the fit between having Tyrese Maxey and Zach LaVine. I feel it feels kind of redundant and it kind of nullifies the success of Tyrese Maxey so far. No, I'm not a fan of that for them. And then last one, Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors. I had an extreme amount of Warriors fans in my mentions drawing up trades to get Zach LaVine. And I was just surprised. I was just surprised. I didn't expect them to look at Zach and say, hey, that's a guy we want to attach the next 3 years of our franchise to. I'm interested. Now, obviously, in this trade, you would have to throw in Klay Thompson or Andrew Wiggins. I know you love Klay Thompson, and you probably still love Andrew Wiggins after the championship run, even though he's bad. Right now, he's bad. But it was just interesting the amount of Warriors fans I saw interested. And I don't know what I think about that fitting to have Zach LaVine and Steph Curry on the court together. But he does add an extra element of shooting. I'm going to keep saying it about Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine's never played with positive spacing in his career. I think he's going to benefit greatly if he can go to a team with positive spacing. And let's get to the favorites. There are only two teams. It is the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers cannot really make their trade into January 15th, and I think that's going to hinder them from being in the real sweepstakes. The Miami Heat can make their trade today. I just don't know what direction the franchise is going to go, but those two would be my favorites for Zach's sake to go to LA, which everybody's pointing to that clip of 2020 where he's like, I want to play with a guy like LeBron and then a big man like Anthony Davis. All right. Think about Zach LaVine, though. He not James Harden. He not Kevin Durant. He can't point to a team and say, trade me there. I don't think so. Maybe he can. I don't know. Player Patton is crazy right now. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But that's my hierarchy of the Zach LaVine potential trade suitors. Now I'm going to bring in producer Greg to play a little game. We got an over-under. Greg, talk to me.
So for this game, Kenny, I'm going to list some over-unders for the amount of career accolades these young stars are going to finish with.
Okay.
So you're going to let me know over, under. And I think all these lines are pretty fair, although this first one feels very light, feels low.
Okay.
I'll give it to you, though. Jason Tatum, 0.5 championships.
That is a very low line. Hard over. I believe in the Boston Celtics being able to build a team around him to win at least one in his career. One is a minimum, in my opinion. And if they don't do that, then it's an all-time fail to a really great player. I think the line should probably be 1.5, man. I think the line at 1.5 is fair. At that point, because of the way the NBA is, I would actually take the over on that too. I think the Boston Celtics have two of them in the Jason Tatum era. Give me the over.
Victor Wembanyama, 1.5 Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, that's a good line. Oh, man, that's a good line. Wemby takes me as the type. Okay, DPOY in general is like, once you have the reputation, that carries a ton. You could have a very good reputation and just really good numbers to back that up. And you're like, here's your, I'm taking the over on this one. Because if we're saying he's in the conversations now as a rook, I can imagine what year 6 could look like. 100%, give me the over.
Tyrese Halliburton, 9.5 All-Star appearances.
9.5 that's a crazy line. Russell Westbrook has 9 for reference. Russell Westbrook is a 9-time All-Star. So do I believe Tyrese Halliburton is going to have more All-Star appearances than Russell Westbrook? Is there anything about his game that I feel like wouldn't translate well to his 30s? I'm going to say no. I think the playmaker will always be there. He showed us time and time again that the shot is real. But again, Russ only has 9. So he's already got one early, so that helps. He's got one already. He's going to have another one this year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He will probably always be the engine in Indiana.
How old is he, Kenny?
He might be 23 now.
So
He
this
might
would
be
assume that he'll
23
play
now.
into his early 30s, early mid 30s.
Yeah, but you know how the NBA is. You know, you get an injury here, and then he's 30. He's 23. He's 23, turning 24 this season. You have an injury, and then boom, you miss. I'm sorry, Reese. I think I got to take a slight under. I think I got to take a slight under.
Anthony Edwards, a half MVP.
Anthony Edwards half MVP. Bring the MVP trophy back to Minnesota. I would take the over. I would take the over. If you go back to look at some of our previous episodes when I was having a conversation about which current players can I see end up being top 10, I mentioned Anthony Edwards. I think you need a couple MVPs to make that a possibility. Whoa. I don't mean top 10 all time. I'm sorry. I just want to take a step back for y'all. Top 10 in the NBA for a period of time. I think Anthony Edwards has that. And I feel as though if you are top 10 in the NBA and you're able to lead your team to a really good record, you're going to be in conversations. I'm going to give him an over. I think he's got one in him, at least one in him. I want to say thank you to y'all for watching or listening to this episode of the Kenny Beecham Podcast. If you watched or listened to the whole thing, you had to enjoy it, right? Leave a like, subscribe, 5 stars. Hey, this is a new one. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We got an independent podcast and we're trying to grow it to the #1 show in the world. I was always saying America, in the world. Basketball show in the world. So tell a friend to tell a friend that if they need their NBA fix 2 times a week, the Kenny Beecham Podcast is the way to go. The conversation is always fluid. So you let me know what you think about the Draymond Green situation. You let me know what you think about the play-in. And was I right or wrong about my hierarchy of the Zach LaVine trade pieces? I'll see y'all in a couple days, y'all. Peace.